Hello, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. Let me know in the chat box if not, if you have technical problems. But hi, welcome to the webinar presenting the results for H2 2017 sales data collection conducted jointly by GOGLA and Lighting Global. I will leave a couple of minutes after 4 before starting off with the content of the webinar, just to let more people join us. And so we probably wait just a couple of minutes more before actually starting. I can see now we have around 15 attendees. And again, feel free to shout in the chat box if you have any technical challenges at the moment, not hearing it properly. Also, just as housekeeping, I want to inform you, as you saw, like the webinar is going to run until 5 p.m. CET, so it's going to be around 1 hour, and we are going to have some different presenters from GOGLA and Lighting Global talking about the data collection and the results that we've seen, but also we are going to have some time at the end for some Q&A questions. So feel free to any point in time during the webinar to put the questions you have in the chat box so that we can then pick them up at the very end. And also this session is currently recorded, including the Q&A part, and is going to be available for later consultation on both YouTube and WeChat for the people accessing it from China. Also, it's going to be promoted on our channel, so that's where our social media channel, so that's where you are going to be able to access it. And we are going to leave another couple of minutes to leave people to join us and attend. I can see now we are almost at 20 attendees, so we are slowly growing. Hope you can still hear me loud and clear.
I certainly can, Sylvia. Just Susie here, also from GOGLA, so looking very much forward to the presentation and feeding in on the impact section.
Thank you, Susie. Yes, I will introduce both you and Leo, who are hosting this webinar with me, in a second. And I think with these last people joining us, we can get it started. Of course, people are gonna jump in as we go. No problem with that. And you should be able also to see my screen. And yes, so let's get it started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar that today is gonna present you the key findings and some insights to the sales and impact data that we have been collecting from GOGLA members and Lighting Global IFC associates companies for the period of July-December 2017. Here with me hosting the webinar, I have Susie Wildum from GOGLA. She's our research advisor and she leads all the work that we do on the impact research. So she's gonna talk later about the impact data. Susie, shout out if you can still speak so that we can test everything.
I can indeed. Thank you, Sylvia, and I'm very happy to be here. So hi to everyone on the line. Thank you for joining us.
And we also have Leo from Lighting Global, who's our partner in conducting this data collection, informing about the data of the sector. and also is gonna speak to you about the methodology and also moderating the questions that you're gonna have at the very end of this presentation. Leo, let's try also if you can also speak.
Thank you. Yes, I'm here, and it sounds like we've got a great lineup for you, everyone. So looking forward to getting into that with you. Thank you, Sylvia.
Perfect. And also regarding the Q&A, feel free to put the questions in the chat box whenever you have one. We're going to pick them up at the very end. Just again, touching base on the agenda for today. The whole webinar is going to last 1 hour. So we're going to finish at 5 p.m. sharp CET time, and we're going to touch base about the background of the methodology of the report, and then dive into global, regional, and the top 10 country markets results, and then the impact data. And I'm going to now leave the floor to our report. What does it cover?
Thank you, Sylvia. So I'd just like to stress again that as we go through this, please do just add your questions in the chat, and then we'll address them as we can later. So I think the key thing to note here is that this is the 6-month initiative that GOGLA and IFC, Lighting Global and World Bank Group undertake. It's part of the 2-year initiative where we have the Off-Grid Market Trends Report, which has just been released in January, and it forms that broader effort to share the impacts in the what we broadly call this solar off-grid market. But specifically, the key point to note is we're talking about kits, plug-and-play systems, solar lanterns only in this report. So individual components, whether they be batteries, solar modules, mobile phone chargers, or even appliances such as televisions, fans, although we recognize those are not included in this report. And that is a key, a key part of the evolution of where this has come from. And there are options in future to expand the report, I believe, which will be discussed at the GOGLA AGM and through ongoing consultations with you as members. So as the GOGLA members and the Lighting Global Associates, on together we had 67 companies participating in this report, and that's really strong, definitely the most comprehensive contribution to market survey reports that we have in the world, and it's really building on all of the input from the companies. So again, we're very grateful that you make this possible. The focus here is on that 6-month period in a deep dive, and as you will see, there are some cumulative results that are still shared. Okay. And now moving down into just drilling down, key point we as practitioners, we often forget is to make clear what scope of what segment of the wider market we're covering here. And there's often misunderstanding about this by those who aren't deeply involved, and that can lead to some misrepresentation in the media and such. So we've gone to great extents, both if you look in the last market trends report, there's quite a detailed analysis of what share of the market we have visibility on, and we've incorporated that into this report. So I'd like to draw your attention to the final column on the far right, which says the share represented by affiliates. So what we found through that market trend report produced by Dalberg is that the data in this report represents about 30% of the total market for these Pico PV products, solar lanterns, small solar lighting kits, and the larger solar home system kits. And the other columns in here are different forms of research that we've been privy to, which we've used to get to that analysis of the market. And what those forms of research show, of course, there's a great variety from country to country, and that's indicated for you here as well. We want to try and give you a better understanding of how representative this report is. And I think this does the best job that we've ever had of doing that for you over many years. But there is still, of course, a caveat, and that's just to point out that there is then further greater variety when you get down to individual products. Of course, there's a great variety in market share whether or not you're looking at the small, if you like, the real consumer end of a solar light, or all the way up to the large solar home systems. There'll be massive variability to compare to this, but we're looking at the market overall. I think the last note to mention on that is that actually, if you look at the other figures there, the interviews, the desk research, they have all included different elements, such as the component-based solar home systems are included in the total market, which are sold piece by piece, which are not kits, for example, and all of the estimates for generic products, which are also sold into the market, maybe not pushed by a particular brand or a company, they're also included in that wider part. So when we look at 30%, it's 30% of the total market, including all component-based kits, component-based systems that are sold, the individual components, individual generic products. Happy to answer any questions on that at the end. We can move to the next slide. Now, what we wanted to draw your attention to here is that the value of this report really for us has been driven by helping companies basically succeed in delivering energy access solutions to rural people. That's the purpose of all of the work really that the Lighting Global and GOGLA programs undertaking, is to support this approach, and that involves supporting donors, policymakers, investors with the right information to, if you like, feed this sector, and of course for companies to be able to make the right decisions. And so individual companies who share their data with us in this report on a confidential basis will receive their own data represented next to the complete aggregate market in order to enable them to better understand their position. And traditionally this has been provided to all participants of companies who took part, and the public element of this report has only been available on the report that is a PDF. We now have a data platform that Sylvia is going to talk about later. We've got a new development there in recognition of the role that partners are playing in this market. So I'll leave her to share that with us later. But as I say, really the key purpose here is to empower companies to do better, to get equal access to information, particularly to support those companies who can't afford to conduct this wider market surveying, which is the privilege of those who do have the funds. So it's really part of our work to help support all companies in this sector. And it really, key point, strengthens the advocacy work of GOGLA and Lighting Global to continue to build the credibility of this sector providing modern energy solutions and to drive for any related policy changes. So thank you. This is a cornerstone of all of our work together. Now, just drilling down briefly before we move on to the real results here, want to make sure that everyone's aware that this data is self-reported. It is voluntary. We do require that this information is shared as part, because it is so important to us from GOGLA members and Lighting Global. But ultimately, because it is self-reported, the role of quality checks is important, and that's something that is conducted throughout this process by the data collection team. Now, the key point to note, in order to avoid double counting, the data here is driven only from what we call manufacturers, and that's a bit of a confusing term maybe, but if you just think the company that produces the product, brings it to market, brands it, designs it, quality assures it, and services it, that's what we're calling a manufacturer. And many organizations such as the Descos in this space, we also call them manufacturers because that's the nature of their relationship where they own that product. We then call the distributors those who are selling another company's product, if you like. It is not their brand. It's a more pure term of that distribution name. And by separating those and only focusing on manufacturer sales, that avoids this problem of double counting for now. Other key point is, in order to prevent individual companies' confidential data, we have a 3 data point rule where we either need 3 individual manufacturers to report aggregate manufacturer data, or if we have any products within a product category, we only report a whole product category if more than 3 companies are reporting sales within that product category. So that's our general rule, and we stick to that, absolutely. We're a little bit more rigorous than that in certain cases on a manual basis if we notice that due to the nature of the market, even if we followed that rule, it would still be revealing to individual company data. And so in some cases, we then only report data on a regional level, not on a country level, in order to further protect company confidentiality. I just want to really stress that point. It's very critical to us that we do our best to report what companies are comfortable with as well. And the final point here is that the cash sales revenues are those what are represented under revenue. We do not share revenue under pay-as-you-go business models because of the issue of a lack of comprehensive data there, and a effort is being undertaken to revise how we report pay-go overall in this report in order to better represent the rather complicated nuances of that element of the sector, which we will see in future. And so finally, I wanted just to drill down here on to help you understand, when we're looking at the report, we have what we call the different product categories, as I mentioned earlier. The key point to note is when you're reading the report, actually what we're trying to always capture is the service, the value that's delivered to the end customer here by our product. It really doesn't matter the wattage of that so much in terms of how we categorize them, but we need a physical number practically in order to segment the products in the database, etc. And so what you'll see in the report is reference to 2 meta categories, if you like, which are the commonly accepted terms: Pico PV up to around 11 watts, solar home systems being above 11 watts. And then within there, the key points to note are that what we call this 1.5 to 3 watt peak section is a single light and mobile phone charging. In other words, that's the largest solar portable lantern. And as you'll know, some of those are 3.5 watts or so, about maximum. They're still included in that category. So all solar portable lanterns are included in category 1 or 2. Beyond that, even the multiple light in Pico PV, that there is still what some people are referring to as solar home systems, but by the definition, that sits under Pico PV because it's under 11 watts. And for those of you interested in the multi-tier framework, it's helpful to refer back to this slide because this maps out what level of energy access are provided by those product sales within the framework of the multi-tier framework. I won't go into detail on that. It's a very detailed point. I believe we give links here for those of you who are interested. There's the SMAP report Beyond Connections, which fully explores the multi-tier framework, and recent work by the SE for All program on the global tracking framework. And again, I'd welcome anyone who's got specific questions on that to reach out to us, because it is something that's becoming increasingly important to us. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Sylvia, to get into the meat of the report. Hope that was timely.
Thank you, Leo. It was perfect. Thank you very much for the thorough overview. I think now we are ready, after understanding what the methodology is about, to look at the numbers and avoid misunderstandings. In general, I hope some, if not all of you, at least some of you have seen already the report. The report has reported globally 4.15 million products for the period of July-December 2017. And here in this slide, you can see the comparison with the previous round, which is from January to June 2017, but also with the same period of 2016. Also here, you can see the cash sale revenues generated by the products. Again, here only the cash revenues are presented, not the pay-go revenues. And also there, we can see a quite positive figure with a layer, more or less for the first time in this reporting round, we are the newly installed capacity. The capacity installed in this reporting round counted in megawatts, taking into account the reported panel size for each product. And also we took a look at the numbers backwards, looking at what we have installed in the previous round. And this round is the first round in which we surpassed the 20 megawatts. And we decided to add this in the report to be able to see the contribution that larger solar home system are giving to the whole sector, and also to be able to compare the off-grid sector to the more traditional PV scene, as now is becoming more and more relevant in terms of the panel size and panels installed worldwide. So that's the reason why we decided to add that. Looking more at the single product categories, we can see here a split on the product categories that have been sold worldwide. Again, the 94% in this time round has been sold in Pico PV products, while the solar home system are still way smaller in terms of volumes compared to the Pico PV products. But they are increasing, especially in the category of 21 to 49. And you can see here, of course, the percentage of change are quite high, but is a relative change. Of course, if you look at the absolute number, we are still talking about less than 100K units. So this gives you a picture and a little bit of comparison with the first half of the year, which categories seem to be growing and which ones seems to be a little bit decreasing. Again, especially in the solar home system space, fluctuation are normal, especially since it's a more less mature market. And in the 0 to 1.5 category, it may be due to the fact that an increased commodification is seen in that space, especially causing our report to be able to cover less share of the market in such categories. So maybe the -9% that you see in this slide is not indicative of the actual home market, but of course we report, as Leo pointed out, about our affiliates. Diving more, and feel free always to add questions in the chat box, but looking more at the regional results, here you can see a comparison again from the first half of the year and from the second half of the previous year. We can see that the percentage change between regions, again, smaller regions and less mature markets such as Central Africa are seeing larger percentage increases. This is due to the fact that the absolute numbers were very small the previous rounds, and now they're becoming increasingly larger, almost reaching the same size as West Africa, which has seen a little bit of decrease compared to the previous half of the year. While East Africa seemed to have recovered a little bit from the possibly problems caused by the drought that was happening back in the past, and now some countries are already recovering, some countries are still falling behind. Then this gives you more or less an overall picture. When we talk about Middle East and North Africa, which is the third largest region after Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, of course here we should remind ourselves that the MENA region can see a lot of bulk purchase for humanitarian aid. So this might not reflect the situation of a commercial market, but yet these sales are reported to us, so we report it back to you. South Asia is mainly represented by India, as we will see later on, is the largest market that we have visibility upon. There is other large market in South Asia where we have less visibility due to the fact of local manufacturing. Also here you can see cash share revenues. Of course, also here PEGA revenues are excluded, and the fourth largest region is the East Asia and Pacific. Looking more at the two, I chose here to present the product category split for two of the key regions, which are East Africa and West Africa by product category. Here you will see the split for East Africa. East Africa has seen an increase in the two, the second and the third category, while the first one seems to be plateauing on just more or less the same number as the first half of the year, while the largest increase can be found in the 21 to 49 category, which is also leading the increase that we have seen before overall worldwide. Also, the largest category of 100 plus is increasing, while the one from 50 to 100 seems to be slightly decreasing. A different picture can be drawn for West Africa, where all this, the Pico PV segment seems to be decreasing compared to the first half of the year, while the largest systems, especially from 11 to 50 watt peak, seems to be seeing an increase overall, while the largest category seem to be plateauing here. Again, here, some of the purchases made in the Pico PV segment, they may be due to government purchase or other bulk purchases, so that's why we can see fluctuation. And also, it's a less mature market, so it's more normal to see this fluctuation again. Looking at the top 10 countries, again, as usual, as we are used to see in the last reporting rounds, India and Kenya still have the lion's share. Here you can see the lion's share they have in terms of global volume. They have together almost 45% of the overall products sold. And then we have some new entries compared to the previous years, which are Congo, Malawi, and Bangladesh. As if you have seen the report, there is a section explaining more in depth each of these countries, why we think they are in the top 10, especially regarding Bangladesh. We suppose that here there's probably some sales that went into the refugee crisis, as it can be seen probably with the installed capacity, because it's very low for even such large amount of systems, which may be due to the small size of them. So they're probably solar lanterns. And in this, especially in this slide that you see, the installed capacity comes in handy, because we can compare countries not only by the volumes that they sell, but also by the installed capacity that they have brought to the countries. In here is pretty plain to see that Kenya has almost double the capacity installed than India in this last 6 months between July and December 2017. And this can tell you, even with much less than half of the products sold. So this tells you what's the average size of the system that entered the country, more or less. Also, it's notable in terms of installed capacity, Nigeria, which with such small number of systems sold, has a very large installed capacity, together with Tanzania, which represent around 10–15% of the global installed capacity worldwide. Again, here we can see some of the changes. Tanzania, we used to be in the first 5, is now entered again the top 10, but in almost one of the last spots available. And probably seeing a little bit of recovery compared to the previous years due to the droughts. Uganda and Ethiopia still register a little bit of flexion in a negative way, especially Ethiopia, where maybe the commodification of the market plays a larger role. Also, as a new entry was Indonesia, also again with small system size sold there, just hitting the bar of 100K. And yeah, this is the top 10. We tend to when writing the report, we contact companies and experts and people in the markets to tell us what could possibly have caused such changes, and we report it back in the report. And of course, we are limited in talking about single company changes. So if a swing is caused by a single company, or we cannot, of course, share that, but feel free to ask a question again in the chat box. I can see it's getting populated with some questions. Feel free to continue do so if you have other insights, even contrasting insights, and we can then talk about it in the very end. Yeah, and then also I wanted to offer a deep dive for India here in terms of product categories. Here, after the demonetization, we have seen a little bit increase in India as well. Not in the smallest category, but in the other two, namely in the 3 to 10 watt peak category, where again the percentage increase seems very high, but when you look at the absolute number, it's still less than 100K units. But this shows, especially these categories where the MFI sector is more present and alive, and this probably can tell us that the demonetization stopped having such a big effect on the market as in the previous two rounds, as the MFI sector seems to be picking up again in that segment. And yeah, so this was a very brief overview. Of course, in the report you will find much more, and I will now hand over to Susie, and I will be available at the very end for further questions and further comments. And now, Susie, if you want to be unmute yourself and start talking about our impact metrics that complements very nicely our sales data report, and they are drawn from the sales figure.
Great, thank you so much, Sylvia. Indeed, the impact metrics that we report on here, we've captured a lot of research that enables us to use some of the sales data in order for us to give an estimate of the impact of the sector, or of that sort of 30% of the sector that Leo described when he was explaining the methodology earlier on. And you can see here some of the key statistics that we're pulling through. One thing to note that's quite particular to this particular round of reporting, for all of those of you who've seen this report before, is that you will notice that the impact section in the report is actually quite slim this time. And the reason for that is that we've improved the way that we're reporting, or we're currently right now improving the way that we can report on historical sales within the database. Previously, some of the sales that we had seen within our reporting were not coming through, perhaps where companies had taken part in the reporting exercise in previous years, but we're no longer doing so. And so we were actually not able to report as accurately on the historical sales as we would have liked. And so just for this particular round, we have limited the data that we're sharing because we are undergoing a large revision to the database to mean that we can accurately report or estimate, I should say, on those aggregates and cumulative data for future rounds. We also have a large piece of research going on to explore the socioeconomic impact across the different system sizes with more specificity. And so this revision is actually somewhat more whole scale, in that we'll be able to, in future rounds, report more accurately on the different impacts as they're seen in those lantern ranges, but also in the sort of the different ranges of the solar home systems, the 3 to 10 watt range, the sort of the slightly bigger home systems, and then the larger ones at the top of the scale. So for that reason, as there's so much more revision work coming up, we chose to give a slimmed down version of the impact metrics reported numbers in this particular public report. And you'll see here a couple of those headline figures. The one thing that we did see still quite clearly in the report from this time is that we continue to see an increase in the number of customers who are moving up those tiers of energy access, the moving up in terms of the energy services that are being provided to them, that Leo described a little bit when he was talking about those system sizes, tiers, and the MTF, again, when we touched on the methodology. So that's quite notable. And alongside that, we're also seeing an improvement in the available amount of light that's being produced by the systems, and indeed, actually, in terms of the light hours that people have available from their systems, which is indicative of those essentially some perhaps a little bit bigger, longer lasting and more efficient systems being sold into the market from GOGLA members and IFC associates. So one thing that we could, without sort of the need for that system size split or the or the methodology, sorry, or the historical data, we could see very clearly still this round was that we are seeing that uptick in customers moving up what we now terming, I think, the energy staircase, and perhaps getting a better service from the products that they're being provided with. So I just wanted to share those couple of impact metrics with you guys on this call today. I'm assuming we have quite a few members and IFC associates that are on the line. So just to be clear, within your individual company reports that are on the platform, again, that Leo mentioned at the beginning of the call, you can actually see more detail for your own products and services. So that still is available for members online. That won't have been obviously affected by other companies not participating. And so for those reports, individual company reports, the data is there, even if it's perhaps not for the public one for this round. But yes, definitely a watch this space for the next round, where we'll have been able to undertake this revision and have a bit more to say on these and on that system size split as well. And then this next slide is just to dig into that movement up the tiers that we spoke about on the previous slide, just to see there still is the majority of customers still benefiting from that tier 1 energy access. But we are seeing, as I say, a few more customers moving up into that tier 2 energy access. And in that tier 2, we're not just talking about lighting or multiple lighting systems in homes and radios and phone charging, but actually now where a big number of customers are also able to power televisions and larger appliances as well. So that's what we're seeing in that tier of energy access. As I say, a briefer update on the impacts for this particular report, but I'm very happy as well to take questions and comments on that, which I think are coming up in just a moment. Back over to you, I think, Sylvia.
Yeah, thank you, Susie, for giving the overview. Yeah, and of course, we are talking about in this very brief webinar about some of the data. And as I said, as also Susie said, in the public report, you will find much more. But also there's another tool that also comes very handy in terms of more data and more granularity, which is the online data platform. Our participating companies, the one on the line, I can see Mobisol, RAL, I can see several members, and they know that they have free access to our online data platform, from which they can also download graphs and see their individual reports with a selection of those graphs and tables, but they can do much more and see much more granularity, and also have a little bit of historical overview per country and per region, looking at so being able to draw their conclusion on market trends in specific countries. And from this round onwards, we are going to make available the access to this online data platform, granted against a fee, and is going to have, of course, non-company specific aggregated data for sales, cash revenues, newly installed capacity, and this is going to be, again, on the same URL. You're going to be able not to see the company data, of course, as our companies can. They can see their market share, but you're going to be able to see higher granularity and historical overview, and also as well download graphs and tables to use to produce other reports or for your own calculation around the market. And for those who are interested in such access, and also to know the details of the pricing, and especially for GOGLA members, associate members, there's going to be, of course, a different pricing that non-GOGLA associate. Please contact Evelyn Johnson. You have her email here. You can find it also on our website. She's gonna give you all the additional info you might need to be actually able to access this online data platform, which looks a little bit like this screenshot, in which you can dive into the highlight of the report, the sales data, more detailed, the impact metrics, and download also the public report from there. And I can see now a few questions in our chat box, but feel free to add some more now. And I can see that there is one directed more to Leo. I'm gonna pass it on, Eva, as I think that's more of a personal question to Leo. I'm gonna pass it on. And on your other question, again, Eva, you're gonna be able to see the recorded version of this on our YouTube channel. Please follow. It's gonna be published on our Twitter account. And again, you can watch this space on YouTube and see it there. And Paula Burning from Mobisol is telling us that in her view, the reporting of the megawatts can be a double-edged sword, because in some financiers' eyes, the figure of 22 megawatt is still too small. I think that's what you mean by saying not material, forget it. Yes, I mean, that's something that can, of course, compared to other renewable energy sources, can be mistaken for a very small number, but we can see that this is ever increasing each and every round, and we really think that this one, this figure may help us, especially in the advocacy for larger system sizes, as Mobisol is also doing. So we do hope not to incur in the problems of this double sword. And Susie, I don't know if you wanted to add something on that.
I just wanted to clarify as well, Sylvia, it's just for that 6-month period. Am I correct in thinking it's not? Yes, so it is also obviously over the course of time. That would obviously be far, far larger if we looked at that from 2010, but we've only just started capturing the megawatts now. And so if I am correct, please do stop me if I'm wrong, Sylvia, but that is just for that 1 6-month period. And so it is just reflective of a brief time span.
Yes, indeed. It covers only these 6 months. So also, I think in the report, in the very beginning, we also show how much was installed in previous rounds, where of course we were not reporting because we did not yet have a methodology on this, and it's still been above 50 megawatts since H1 2016, and we can assume that large part of those systems are still in use. So we can see if every round we are installing 5 megawatts, or 20 from now onwards, we are going to be able to sum up to a quite significant number. And I think that please shout, Paula, if you still have some comments around this. And I can see that Gabriel put on the question on the big difference between Kenya and India when compared total units sold and revenues. And I will go back quickly to that slide, Gabriel, so then we can try it through with the numbers in front of everyone. And yes, you can see this large difference, and thank you for pointing it out. It's mainly because India is a cash-based market, mainly. So here, the revenue figures that we capture, they cover, we are confident that they cover very big share of all the products sold that you see in the first column. While for Kenya, this is not the case, because as you may know, Kenya is one of the largest markets in terms of PAYGO, and for sure it was one of the pioneers market. So you can see here a very small figure, only $6 million generated, but please bear in mind that excludes PAYGO revenues, while the products sold include the PAYGO unit sales. And I know that this may be confusing, and that's why, as Leo pointed out in the beginning, we are undertaking a larger PAYGO revision, including all our members, to develop such methodology, and hopefully in our report that is going to be shared in the end of October, we're going to be able to show the split between PAYGO volumes and cash volumes, as we're going to have a larger methodology to cover that and do it more soundly. And I think these were the questions. Please shout out if there's any more question, and please get in touch with Evelyn if you're interested in the platform, in the accessing the platform. And if from there you also have more doubts, you can also contact us as GOGLA at our info.gogla.org email. And please download the report and check it out, and come back to us with some suggestions on what you would like to see there and what will help you, because it's an ever-changing exercise. We always undertake revisions to be able to serve you better. with data.
Hi, I'm wondering if you can hear me okay, Sylvia and everyone.
Hi, I thought you dropped, Leo.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you. No, actually, there's been some internet connectivity challenges for me, so I'm on the phone, but still connected. Yeah, great. I just wanted to add on that point of the thing. It's great to get these few questions. So one key point was just, I think one thing that we haven't emphasized is on Paula's question about the megawatts is we completely agree, Paula, and we understand that challenge. So one of the key issues is that maybe this report is not the best place to include that megawatts. Now that could be a thing for us to review in future. But one key point for us is that we are knowing that the sector does not have this aggregate megawatts recorded. And so for those who are asking for it, and it is being asked aggregate cumulatively over years, it's something that we need to have now, you know, in terms of us doing a thorough job to assess the size of this. Without that figure, many people then, it means that they can actually undermine the overall credibility of this effort if we can't give them that figure. So in a sense, we need to do this now. We are, showing it's a real sector to the world, and that is a necessity. Yes, how to communicate that? Definitely, there's some nuances there. But what we are seeing actually over time, this will be valuable when we start to compare, for example, to the newly installed domestic capacity that is delivered by the grid. We actually find that that is very small, in terms of individual homes. And so we will be seeing the growth of this over time. And so I want to add that. And as it is a new variable, a new indicator rather, that we're reporting, we will then have the cumulative monitoring of this will be included in future reports. But as we said, for now, we can see this total about 22 megawatts in the last 6 months is what we've got.
Yeah, thank you, Leo. Thank you, Leo, for the clarification.
I just wanted to another of the kind of another way of answering one of the questions we had as well. Just wanted to draw people's attention to this question about individual country insights, where we were asked there about a little bit more detail. So yes, as Sylvia said, we did give a summary here, but if you look at the full report, you can find on page 34, that's where we have the market insights per country expanded upon a bit more. And there you can get some answers to the questions we had about Kenya, for example, and India, where we can give you a bit more depth there. And I just thought it's a good opportunity, as we haven't got so many questions yet, just to tie in then to another few points in the main report. As we said at the beginning, the long-term trends, we gave a little bit of a picture there. But again, if you looked on page 15 of the full report, that's where you can see the last 8 years of sales laid out nicely. And we have a new development, which we find is very helpful. We hope that you'll find the same. It's part of looking at a 2-year block. So we've broken out for the last 2 years on page 24 and 25 in the full report, where we go into a lot more granularity. And by using that, what you can start to see are more of the long-term historical insights of the overall market sales as per the regions. In fact, it's 3 years that are covered there. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that. And also just to make one kind of caveat, again, this is a words for the wise. Many of you will know this, but I'm not sure if there are any of you on the board who are new to this. So I just wanted to emphasize one thing that we know as practitioners is to bear in mind that this snapshot of 6 months, although it's very critical, we also, it's important to put it into context, that because it is such a small period of time, and because this is such a small sector dominated by a few large players, it's very easy for for there to be significant changes in this short-term period, which may not actually represent deeper significant trends in the overall market. They may be more reflective, as Sylvia said, of a short-term macroeconomic issue in one of the key markets, or in terms of a company's organizational structure, expansion, etc. And so we do explain this in the section of market dynamics which you'll find on page 11, where we just give a little bit more context again, just so that people can help understand the fluctuations, if you like, and the natural cycles and the forces, if you like, that are affecting this sector. Yeah, I just want to draw attention to those. I'm not sure if we have a few more questions, Sylvia, as well in the meantime.
I think I cannot see any further questions, so we can probably end the webinar a couple of minutes earlier. And yes, thank you all for attending, and please reach out if you have any other further questions. We are always available to clarify doubts and also to take on comments to always improving our reporting. So with this, I maybe end the webinar. Thank you all, and feel free to find out the recording of this webinar on our YouTube channel.
Thank you, Sylvia.